We've bought one of the worst narrowboats money can buy.
And it didn't disappoint. Although the boat was on the water when we purchased it and it drove, the engine barely ran. Once we took that engine out and stripped it down, it was much worse than we thought because it had a cracked piston. As well as the engine, the interior of the boat was completely outdated, so we got that stripped out, which uncovered even more damage. Now that we've done a lot of work on the inside, it's time to transform the outside of the boat.
So our next job is something that you lot at home have been commenting over and over again, and that is sandblasting.
Only problem is with media blasting, or sandblasting as everyone knows it, is the mess it creates. So this stuff goes absolutely everywhere, so it'll ruin our unit, and that is why we need to enclose the area that we're going to be blasting. So we put an order into MGM Building Supplies to order ourselves some 6x2 and also a load of sleepers. The idea we had come up with to cover in our boat was to build what can only be described as a gigantic TeePee. So we made these professional frames that went up and over the top using that 6x2. Now I wouldn't say this thing is the most solid building I've ever built, but it's going to do a job. We tied the sections of frame together using some battens, and we also put in some diagonals to try and give it just a little bit of strength. Operation Gigantic TeePee is fully underway, so we've got 3 lined up now. We're thinking we're going to do another one here and then one off the end of the boat, and we're also going to do the same on the front, and then we can look at actually covering this space in. What we need to remember when we're making up this frame is Rob from iBlast, who's going to be doing our sandblasting, needs to have space to work around this boat, and we also plan on lifting it up, so we need to take that all into account. So we feed over one that's going to go right off the end of the boat, and we add in some more diagonals to make sure it doesn't kill us and fall over while we're inside. Just going to check because
Steve's judging us.
Steve reckons it's not plumb. Well, it is, look. With all of our levels checked, making sure our legs were perfectly plumb, we move on to the last section of our TeePee frame, and that is going to extend up and over the front. We then attach it to the rest and add in more of those diagonal braces to make sure it's not going to fall over at any point. And it may not look like much, but we are very proud of our large TeePee. So now that's done, we need to get this plastic up and over the top. So our plan of action is we're going to use this professional rolling assembly, i.e. the broom, to hold the roll here. We're going to pull it out, attach it to 2 of these poles, so these poles help hold the plastic up, and then the plan is to walk it up and over the Leaning Tower of Pizza. First job, we reel out that plastic and begin to attach it to 2 extendable poles, or fishing rods, whatever you want to call them. So we get that taped on using some duct tape or cloth tape, and then we start to feed it up and over our frame. We soon got caught on the front, so we used a 3rd one to lift it up and over, and slowly fed it up and over the top of that TeePee frame we had built. Operation TeePee has its first layer of plastic on the very top. It was super easy, we definitely didn't struggle. Because we take great pride in our work, we're going to make sure we pull all of this plastic nice and tight, and we're going to start stapling it. So we're going to pull them like that, staple them on, and make sure everything is nice and straight. And next week we're going to be doing TeePees at Glastonbury, so make sure you hit us up. Don't hit us up. Definitely do not hit us up. So we start to remove all of the slack out of the plastic. We just do that one section at a time, making sure we put some staples into the timber to keep it nice and tight and in position. We then pull it down over the front and do exactly the same thing, stapling it all into position. Top piece done, and we've gone round and made it fairly tight. It's pretty good. Now we're going to start doing the side, so we're just going to pull it down, and we're in our heads. This is what's going to happen, and then we're just going to slide it up and staple it on. That's how easy it's going to be.
Watch it. Just watch it.
Plan all in place, we start to unroll the next section of our plastic, cut it off, and then use a ladder to walk it up and over the previous piece we installed. And it's pretty much the same thing. We're just stapling it onto the timber and overlapping that previous piece.
Any bits we can't get to on the outside because of the shape of the TeePee, I'm going to use good old duct tape.
Obviously we don't want any gaps, but we probably will end up with a few. And fun fact, duct tape is a brand, it's actually called cloth tape. So with that first piece taped on, we move on to the end and it's all the same. We just want to try and get this as sealed as we possibly can.
We're going to move on to the second half, and that means we're going to be fully enclosed.
Another thing to note here, all of this plastic is from Dust Arrest, and when we got it we wanted to make sure we ordered the thickest gauge we could get because sandblasting is pretty abrasive. The TeePee is complete, we're completely sealed in. However, as you can see, we have zero access into our TeePee, and that is why Steve from Dust Arrest has brought us these little magnetic doors. Because we're going to be in and out of this little TeePee, we need a way of getting in and out and resealing. That's why Steve from Dust Arrest has brought us these reusable magnetic door flappy things. Not sure what you'd call them. Anyway, they're pretty easy to install. You put on the double-sided Velcro strip, that orange piece, and then you simply Velcro the door to that first piece, and now you've got an opening.
I'm Brad.
I'm Phil, and together we're Brad and Phil. That is the door installed. However, Steve and Dust Arrest are involved in this project for a much more important reason.
We've invited the boys to join the dust blocker revolution, and that starts with this dust blocker unit here, which we brought along to keep the boys safe.
Ain't gonna do a lot of work here though, is it? So let's get installed. Once Steve had done his best Seal It Bang impression, we got on with moving this system into position. So the important thing about this is it's a gigantic filter that's going to be moving a lot of air because we need to filter out as much as possible. That is it, operational. As you can see, I'm using my indoor voice. It's actually super quiet. It's a lot quieter than I thought it was going to be. So now let's give it a little test. Obviously, this thing moves a lot of air, and that's going to be important when Rob from Sandblast starts to add in all of that aggregate. That's the boat and all of our TeePee set up with our dust extraction. So now we're going to get set up with the sandblasting equipment. When I say we basically just watched Rob. So Rob's going to show and explain what everything does to us so I can explain it to you. So this little chamber here helps keep the air pressure stable. That blue thing there is to remove any moisture from the air, which is actually quite a big problem. And then obviously we've got that grey piece there, which is a gigantic compressor. And the last of the lines is what the blasting comes out of. This lever here, obviously that's the main air feed for everything. If we do that, that's going to shut him off, mainly because if something happens out here, he ain't going to be able to hear a single thing in there. So he just told us this. Worst emergencies, get out of wash and then tell him what's happening. Run for your life. Emergency action plan all set up. We can move on to the grit itself, and we are using fine grade iron silicate, or as Brad likes to call it, black sand. So we get that loaded into the pot and it takes 100 kilograms, and what we're feeding it through there is actually a bit of mesh to take out any lumps.
All loaded, let's blast.
Now that Rob is completely prepped up, he goes inside and covers up a few bits that he's not happy with before putting on his air-fed mask and going to work. We have just shut everything down so we can show you what is happening. Look how nice this little section looks. That looks like brand new. So that is literally back to the raw steel that it was built with. So now Rob is going to start making his way down the whole side. So we're going to set you up because you can't hear a single word I'm saying when everything's running. So this process is super loud because obviously that is some high compressed air coming out of that nozzle, so you do have to wear ear protection, and obviously he's got on that air-fed mask. So we've removed the sand because you don't want to hear it, believe us.
That is our first batch done. I look like a Formula 1 driver. We're loading up the next pot of aggregate.
An important finish that this leaves is something called SA 2.5. So when we prime this with our 2-part primer, it needs to have a specific etch, which this sandblasting leaves. Rob is just topping up the pot again, and I just want to show you, we may as well change the filters while he stopped. Look how much the dust extraction has taken out of that space. I better not do that too much, because that defeats the object of it. But even the filter that sits behind. Obviously, this isn't going to remove all of the dust because of the way that the sandblasting works. It's constantly throwing it up into the air, but it's important to remove as much as possible, and it's also helping to drag in new air into our little TeePee. So with the filters changed, Rob moves on to the backside of our boat and carries on removing all the years and years of paint that have been added to our canal boat. So I've hoovered up as best I can. We're not going nuts, obviously we're only adding more in. It's just to take the bulk of it out. So this is what we've got done so far. Oh, don't touch that, it's dirty. So we've blasted all the way around.
And got the booty done.
That's the booty is done. And we're all the way around here. Now Rob is going to start heading down that way. But we might have to just clip you in and out because we've ruined the camera already. Yep, unfortunately, because this stuff hits the boat at such speed, what we didn't realise when we first started this is that the ricochets, so when it ricochets off that boat, it comes off at some speed, so it hits you and everything around it. Anyway, we got back in, and for some reason, Rob let Brad have a go before celebrating our 1 million followers on YouTube.
The 18 surfaces has turned up, but we're not using him for rubbish this time. We're actually going to get him on the Sandblaster.
We're going to have a go.
We're like a crap Formula 1 team.
Out of all the things I think you look like, a crap Formula team is not what I think you look like, but I won't say what I'm thinking. Anyway, Dan jumps inside and has a good old crack at sandblasting, and believe it or not, doing the sandblasting is hard work, but it's actually quite therapeutic. Alright buddy, he's fell over. Help's gonna be here soon. What you may not know is originally we only planned to sandblast the bottom of our boat. So if you look at the beginning, we had all the windows and doors covered. But as Rob progressed through the boat, we decided it was going to be better to have the whole thing taken back to raw steel and start from scratch.
We've let the dust settle overnight. We're going to do a quick clean up before we start blasting again. Chris didn't sign up for this. He didn't get to do no blasting, but he's having to clear up with us anyway, but we're going to let him play with it today because we're going to be blasting the roof section and underneath.
Unlike the rest of the boat, the top is a little bit more stubborn because what they've done is they've added grit into the previous paint layers, and that's to add a bit of grip when you're walking on the roof. But the sandblasting removes it with absolutely no trouble at all. Top of the boat is completely done, so Rob has been 100 miles an hour and stripped everything off except a couple of little bits in here, but we're going to leave those because we want to concentrate on getting this boat lifted to do the underneath, and Chris is going to be responsible for it.
What's the plan, Chris?
Just lift it a little bit at a time, see what happens.
So these are what we're going to use. We grabbed these Clark bottle jacks from Machine Mart, and these, because they're 20 tonne, they're going to be able to lift this up. So fingers crossed we don't drop our boat.
I'm going to try not to drop their boat.
I'm glad everyone was in agreement. We did not want to drop our boat. So the plan was to lift it up a little bit at a time. That way, if it did fall, it wouldn't fall very far.
We're going to keep lifting either side with a bottle jack on each side to get another sleeper in here. And then do the same at the back, then come back to the front.
Yes, I told Chris off for putting his hand between the boat and the sleepers. Will he listen? Probably not. So we get on with jacking the boat up a little bit more at a time, starting at the front. And finally, we managed to get that extra sleeper in to each side.
And if you are enjoying this video, at any point, just make sure you hit that like and subscribe and the bell notifications to get regular videos on the boat series. And see more of Chris. And see more of Chris, because we love Chris.
If any of you watching are planning on taking on this work, remember we are trained fools, so make sure you do not copy what we're doing, because we're not sure if it's even correct, but we will try our best. We have got some super exciting news for all of you watching. We are releasing brand new merch, BWA, which is built with ambition, and it's by us, of course, the Home Improvements channel. And the first release is, boom, what he said, boom. And it is a beautiful mess, which for those of you that don't know, that is the actual name of our canal boat. And it's going to be available in this, the loose fit or oversized, the regular fit,
And also this hoodie, which is printed both sides.
So if you want to grab some, they are going to be limited, and the link will be here somewhere to our website. But for now, we've got to get back to work. For Rob to blast the underneath, he would love to have it 62 foot up in the air, but for us, we only really wanted to go up 2 sleepers, because obviously the higher you go, the more unstable it becomes. So we got the front and back up by 2 sleepers, and I also added a load of structural screws into those timbers to make sure they didn't slip out. Now that we're going to be putting Rob underneath, we've added a little bit more blocking, because obviously I don't want to squash him with the boat. So we put one at the front, we've got our big stacks on the side, but we've also put one all the way through, bolted these all together and made some wedges to try and stop it from like. On the back, we've got our sleepers going right across the back on blocks, so now obviously that is going to make it super stable. Once everybody was about 10% sure it was going to be safe, we could then proceed to send Rob underneath, because that is also getting blasted back to bare metal. This whole boat is basically going to be like the day it was built, so we can start everything from fresh. No worries about hidden dangers underneath all of the old paint. While Rob was blasting the underside of our boat, I got on with cutting off all of the old anodes. We will explain what these do, and we'll be replacing them later on, but for now we just needed to remove the existing ones. We was left with a few little tabs, but they're going to have to stay because we didn't want to risk damaging the actual boat itself. While the guys are still sandblasting inside our TeePee, we are going to be making this boat the best we possibly can, and that is because one of you guys are going to be able to win it. When we asked whether you guys would like this to be up for a competition and you may be able to win it, it was pretty clear that you did want it to go up for a competition. So that's exactly what we're going to do, and as soon as it's ready we will get it listed, and one of you guys will be floating this down a canal. It is midday and I am about to chip off, and so is Brad, so we're going to leave Rob in charge because we've got another exciting project that you're going to see in just one moment. Rob, are you going to be alright?
Yeah, I'm good.
Don't let me down.
It's going to be the third Home Improvements member.
Yeah.
We're handing you the torch.
Anyways, I'll see you in a minute. It's been more than a minute, but we are back at Revolution Marine Engineering, so let's go and get our engine. I wish it only took a minute, but it was in fact a 5-hour drive, but it was worth it to take the trip down to Revolution Marine Engineering. So while we was gone, the guys have had the block skimmed because that wasn't very flat, and they've also had the cylinder head skimmed because that was also wobbly. So now we're going to show you how we assemble it, and our first job is the crank. Behind the scenes, Matt and Andy have put tons of work into our engine because even though we found that cracked piston, there was many other problems. So with everything fresh again, it was time for the assembly. And the first thing we need to do is put some jam on these brand new shells or bearings. Some of you may have noticed one of these bearings was slightly different. That's because this one here in the middle is actually a thrust bearing, and that controls how much our crank moves backwards and forwards. First set of bearings installed and the crank in place, it's now time to take a look at the caps. And the caps hold down the crank over the top, and they also need a set of bearings. Crank's in and the bearings on the bottom are in. Now it's time for the caps. So these bits clamp down over our crank and hold it in place, and they also have to go back in the order that they come out. Lucky for us, the caps are numbered and they also have directional arrows on the top. Before we install them, we need a little bit more jam and then some blue raspberry in the corners to make sure nothing leaks. With all that in position, we put the caps down over their designated slots, and then we can torque them down to the correct torque settings.
That is our caps torqued down, and now a very important step is to roll the crank over to make sure we haven't got any tight spots.
If you do have a tight spot, that means something has gone very, very wrong. Lucky for us, it was smooth, so we moved on to the side seals that go into the end caps.
So what you've just seen me do is check the ring gap. These are feeler gauges, and we have the preset measurements from the manual. This is our minimum and this is our maximum.
Another super important step is the ring gap, so Andy checked all of them before installing them onto the pistons. Now this step here is quite worrying because these are known to break if you overstretch them, and if you do snap it, it means we've got weeks of waiting to get a new one. So now all the rings are on. If you have a look here, you'll see that there's obviously a gap between every single one. It's quite important that these are lined up in a specific orientation. So it's going to be there, there, and then on the back side there and there. And you follow the manual, and that is because if you don't and they're all in line, you're going to get blow by. So compression and oil can all escape down the side of the piston. When assembling an engine, you need to take your time and make sure everything is done very carefully, including the bearings that go in our con rods that attach to our brand new pistons. With them in place, we add in some strawberry jam, which is actually assembly lube.
So that's all the pistons prepped, and now it's time to drop them in the hole.
Just like everything else, our bores, our cylinder bores, need to be oiled up to prevent any unnecessary scratching or damage. So we get some oil added before clamping down those rings and tapping each piston into its hole. We then put on the caps on the bottom and put on the retaining nuts. They're only put on loosely for now because we will need to torque these up to spec. But for now we just need to add in each piston and get it temporarily clamped in.
So that's all the pistons complete, installed to spec. Now it's time to move on to the camshaft.
So this engine actually has two camshafts. One is for the rocker assembly, which you'll see soon, so we get that slid into position. But we also need to add a separate one for our pump, but that's not till a little bit later. It is now time to put on our fully reconditioned cylinder head. Like everything else, our cylinder head was not in good condition, so it has new valves. All of the valve seats have been recut so it seals properly. And it's also got new springs and it's had a nice freshen up. So we get that installed with some new bolts, and just like everything else, these are torqued down in a specific sequence to a specific torque. With that on, we torque up the little plate that slides over the end.
Before we put any more of this engine back together, make sure you hit the like and subscribe and the bell to get regular videos on the boat series.
Now that our cams are installed, we can get on some seals and some gaskets before covering all of them timing gears up and tightening all of the bolts up to the spec required. And now that the cam's in, we can put on our diesel fuel pump. So this is mechanical. That second cam we installed is actually what controls the injection on our engine. We then add on our oil filter housing onto the back. It is now time to move away from our fuel pump, but before we do, obviously we had this problem here with the cracked piston, but what we didn't know we had a problem with was the injectors. So these were completely finished, so now they are completely new and rebuilt, so let's get them installed. We had 3 leaking injectors and we also had a stuck injector. So the number 4 piston, the one that was cracked, that injector was actually stuck open. So our theory is it filled up with diesel and that's what caused it to crack. But that shouldn't happen again because these are all now brand new. With them installed, we move on to our intake manifold. So that's that white piece there, before putting on all of our diesel hard lines from our pump to our nice shiny new injectors. Once they're in, we put in our push rods. So from the cam that we installed, they go up to our rocker assembly. On goes the pulley onto the end so we can rotate our engine to the specific mark to make sure we don't get interference when we install our rocker assembly, which is this part here. That gets torqued down and then we start to set the lash, which is the gap between the valve and the rocker. So you see this little wibbly wobbly here? That is meant to be there because obviously as the engine expands, everything's going to tighten up. So that's what we just set just now. With the lash set, we can do one of the final tests to make sure everything's working as it should, and that is to rotate the engine, which we do with no problems. So we get our rocker cover installed and then on goes our exhaust manifold, which is also a heat exchanger. What you don't know is behind the scenes, right, these guys have helped us more than what they're doing now. So every time we get a problem, we quickly call them and they're like, don't worry, do this. So we called Artec and they've dropped them off a nice little gift that they actually wanted and they've been talking to us about. So let's bring them out. So we're going to surprise them. Little surprise. Surprise.
We've got
You said you wanted a welder.
We got
Now
you
you got
one.
Nice.
These guys have been super helpful, and the best part about this unboxing is the fact that Matt did it all with his new welding gloves on.
High five, brother.
Cheers,
You're
brother.
welcome.
Cheers, man.
Make sure you check out Artec for any welders. They are awesome. Anyway, back to the engine. In goes our water pump and our water temperature switch, including the thermostat that sits on top, which is also new. We've now rotated the engine because that's as much as we can get on there without it getting stuck and we wouldn't be able to rotate it. So now we're going to concentrate on the bottom. There's not a lot to go into the bottom side of the engine. First thing is the strainer, which is basically a secondary filter to make sure nothing from the oil pan gets sucked up. Then goes the new gasket and of course the oil pan itself, and the 365 million bolts that hold it on need to be torqued up to a specific torque. Then we need to take this engine off of the stand. These two are used to working on massive engines. They don't normally work on stuff like this. They just did it to help us out. So moving this around is an absolute doddle to these. With it on the floor, they put on the rear seals, the plate, and of course the bell housing which attaches our gearbox to. And the reason we're putting all of this on is because we need the flywheel and starter motor attached, because the plan is to fire this engine up before we leave Revolution Marine Engineering. Everything is now put back together, so the engine technically is built, but what we're going to do now is a little bit of jiggery pokery so we can actually fire it while it's sitting on the floor. Before you can start an engine, you of course need to fill it up with a bit of oil. So we're using Valvoline. We fill it up check the dipstick to make sure it's full, and it's time to jiggy pokery some fuel. So we use a jerry can, put a return and a feed line to the pump so we can feed it some diesel.
This is a very exciting and nerve-wracking time because all the parts that have been changed in the engine, we're about to fire it up and test it for the first time. Fingers crossed.
Make sure you head over to their Instagram to give them a follow. These guys are great. Yeah, buddy. That's good. What a transformation. This engine is now ready to serve many hours on our local canals. So now that the engine is fully reconditioned, we get it loaded back into the van for a final time.
Been fun, now get back to the boat.
Back at the boat, Rob had been blasting to get this thing back to bare still. Because we wasn't there, we had to call in a favour and call Dan from A-Team Services so that him and Rob could get the unit cleared up, ready for the 2-part primer that we needed to apply.
2-pack paint means it's 2 components. So this is your paint, this is your hardener. This paint won't dry unless you put your hardener in it.
Could anyone tell that Rob had been alone for about 3 days? So Rob gets the 2-pack paint mixed up with the hardener and starts to spray it onto our boat. The reason we need to do this so quick is because raw steel will rust super quick.
Just going to put a little bit of masking tape over the bits he's got to weld up, because trying to weld through epoxy paint is a little bit tricky.
Good old Rob, always looking out for everyone else. So he gets that bit covered over before painting the roof of our canal boat.
Boat's blasted, put in primer. I hope they like it.
And we are back at the boat. Before we show you how Rob got on and how good it looks, we have got a lot of mess to tidy up, and that's exactly what we're going to do first. And the first problem was halfway through blasting, we got a bit of a hole in our TeePee.
This is one bit of the unit completely clean. Now we just got to try and get the rest of the unit like it. Phil?
There's a lot of unit.
There's a lot of unit, and yeah, we're just trying to get a place in hand that we don't get in a kerfuffle.
Place in hand. Anyone else know what a place in hand means? Because I don't. So once that part was a place in hand, we moved on to cleaning every little section of our unit. We've all seen our luxury toilets by Titanium, but what you don't know is, 1, Brad's in the ladies and he shouldn't be, but 2, he's hidden behind one of these doors, the red, yellow or blue door.
I'm in the red one.
Clearly he's not in the red one, or is he? So if you want to have a little guess of where he is, chuck it down in the comments.
Red one.
As well as cleaning the unit, we needed to slowly start to remove our TeePee and all of the plastic that was covering it.
Dan, listen, he's ready to help us get this unit back to how it should. Phil, are you okay?
So dusty. And just like the careful manner that we assembled the TeePee, that's exactly how we disassembled it. Perfect. With it all disassembled, we get it loaded onto A-Team's van. Here at the A-Team, he does all of Scotland, Wales.
Dan, you do everywhere, right?
Do everywhere.
Everywhere. Where do you actually do?
South-east, south-west.
South-east, south-west.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, I'll send the coordinates so you guys know. Clear as mud. If you do want to find out what areas he covers, I'm sure his link will be in the description below. But now all of the big bits were gone, it was time to get hoovering again. That is the unit. I'm going to say that is 10 out of 10 cleaning by me. So, unit's clean. Next thing is the actual inside of the boat. That is, it's not ideal, I'll be honest, it's not ideal. So we started with the engine bay, that way we're not walking over all of the mess. Now we are on the inside, so the engine bay is done, but before we start this, here's a quick message from a friend of ours.
Oh, you should have sandblasted it first. Ooh. Well, they didn't, did they? So, whatever.
Thanks Pete, let's get the hoover on. We know guys, we should have sandblasted the whole boat first, but remember we're always trying to bring content, so we do things a little bit out of order, and all that does is create extra work that we didn't have to do. But we got it all cleaned up anyway, and now the boat is looking amazing. That is the boat fully primed, and it's also all we've got time for in this episode. Give me that. If you want some of our new merch, the link will be in the description below. But for now, I will see you later.
Love you, bye.
We'll see you later.